that could ban camping in public areas and revamp the city's structure of government. We are also keeping an eye on a couple of multi-million-dollar bonds as cities expect growth.
Slow-moving thunderstorms continue over parts of the hill country. I'll show you what this means for your Sunday forecast and first warning weather.
And a very good evening to you. I'm Jennifer Sanders. Let's start with the most talked about item on the ballot, reinstating Austin's public camping ban. Here are the latest results that we are seeing right now. 59% are for and 41% are against. An estimated 78% of the votes are in. KXAN City Hall investigator Kevin Clark joins us in the studio right now. And Kevin, we know you've been working to find out what comes next.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if early voting numbers are an indication, Prop B would pass. But even if the ban comes back, that doesn't mean it will take effect right away. It was nearly 2 years ago when Austin City Council voted to get rid of the ban on public camping in most places in the city. Prop B would reinstate the ban. Camping in undesignated areas would become a criminal misdemeanor punishable by fine. Proponents of Prop B have argued that the tent cities that have grown more visible around the city are a public health and safety hazard, and that it hurts Austin's image. Anti-camping ban advocates have said the ban would only drive individuals into the woods where they are less likely to connect with services, housing.
This is an army for the future of the city. We are going to take the city back. This is not about right wing or left wing. It's about standard of living. It's about making Austin a place you can live, work, and raise a family in.
I think no matter what happens, we have to ensure that we get this community together to properly fund housing initiatives that are going to really and truly solve this issue. We know that criminalization isn't the answer.
Now, I asked the city's homeless strategy office if it has spoken with the Austin Police Department about what enforcement would look like when the ban were to take effect. A city spokesperson told us it didn't have any information on those discussions specifically, but that city staff will be working on the practical applications of the ban after the election. Now, the date this would go into effect is the date the election results are canvassed. A city spokesperson tells me that is expected May 11th. 10 days from now. Jennifer?
All right, Kevin, thanks so much. Well, meanwhile, Austin voters have rejected an effort to completely change the structure of government in the city. Now, the city currently operates with an unelected city manager as the chief executive with oversight from the city council. Voters weighed in today on whether to change to an elected strong mayor. KXAN politics reporter John Engel joins us live now from the newsroom with all of those results. John.
Hey, Jennifer, the thinking behind the strong mayor proposal is that the most powerful person in the city, well, they should be elected and accountable to voters. But nearly every city council member came out in opposition to Proposition F, and it failed resoundingly. Here's a look at the results. KXAN has called this race against Proposition F, that receiving 86% of the vote to 14%. Moments ago, I spoke with the group Austin for All People, which formed a broad coalition specifically with the goal of fighting against Proposition F. Here's their reaction to the results.
Our form of government is the most important fallback that we have. And ensuring that representation throughout our city, no matter what zip code, ensures that the issues that are so important in our community, we can find solutions, that we make sure every voice is heard.
Austin chose not to join Houston and 12 of the 20 largest cities in the United States with the strong mayor structure. Things will stay the same for now. Jennifer?
All right, John Engel, thanks so much. Well, here are the latest results for Prop G, which would add an 11th city council district and seat. Latest results show 42% are for and 58% are against. Georgetown had one single proposition. A $90 million mobility bond would fund projects around the city, including making changes to the Southeast Inner Loop. It passed by 67% of votes. And in Williamson County, nearly 14,000 people showed up to vote on Election Day. That's compared to more than 25,000 who voted early. We did talk to an election judge at a polling location in Liberty Hill who blames the rain for the low voter turnout.
A by-election by midday, we would have had 200 to 300 people. I think we've seen about 3 people since 2 o'clock.
And a little over 12% of registered voters showed up to the polls. Well, 66,000 people braved the rain to vote in Travis County. During early voting, more than 100,000 people cast their ballot. That's a 13.6% voter turnout, so it was a little lower turnout than expected, but voting started increasing towards the end. There was hope for a higher turnout today, though.
Election day started off with a really nice turnout that dwindled significantly under the rainfall.
And the Travis County Clerk says turnout in total is about 20%. And there are a few school bonds in districts seeing growth in Central Texas. The latest results show Proposition A passing in Gerald ISD, which is calling for a $111 million bond to build a new elementary school and expand the middle and high schools. 75% of voters were for and 25% were against. In Hays CISD, a nearly $150 million bond has passed with 60% of the votes. It will pay for a new elementary school and expand the middle school. In Williamson County, voters in Liberty Hill closer now to approving a nearly $500 million school bond proposal. Proposition A has passed with 67% of the vote. KXAN's Caitlin Carmute is live in the newsroom. And Kate, what's really attached to this bond proposal?
Yeah, Jennifer, the bond includes renovations to current schools, land acquisitions, and the construction of new schools. There are 4 propositions attached to this bond proposal, but the biggest one is $460 million, which would build several new schools to address growth by nearly 18% over the next 2 years.
It's grown a lot in this area.
It's the reason this Liberty Hill mom says she wants to support her school district.
We moved here almost 3 years ago, and we love it.
89. That's when I started working for the school district here.
As a retired teacher, Sue Surface can attest to the growth.
We had 3 schools when I first started here, and now, well, you can see how many we've got. We used to have 1 nurse, and now we've got a nurse at every campus.
5,700 students currently go to school inside the district. District officials estimate that number to grow by 1,000 students over the next 2 years.
We are very certain the growth is coming.
Proposition A would expand the 2 smaller elementary schools this summer to be completed by August of next year. A new elementary school, middle school, and high school are also in the works.
Following school year, we'll have our expansions of our middle schools and a new elementary school opening. The following year, we'll open an elementary school and the new middle school. And then in the fall of 2025, we start the phase opening of high school number 2.
The goal is to build those 3 new schools over the next 5 years. Jennifer, back to you.
All right, Caitlin, thanks so much. Online right now, we're digging deeper into the election results. We're taking an in-depth look at all of the results and what actually happens next. Our live discussion is streaming at KXAN.com. Well, heavy rain and storms across Central Texas today. Here's some video right now from our storm chaser, Jeff Mangum, in Northwest Austin. Now, this is Bull Creek at 360 and Spicewood Springs Road. Fortunately, I don't think we got any reports of, people being stuck, people having issues because they...
Good evening. Welcome into the KXAN Live Studios. I'm Andrew Snicker, breaking down the local election all throughout the next hour, basically, next 45 minutes. Also, just a quick note, if you are on Facebook right now watching, please swing over to KXAN.com as we dive deep into all these issues in the Austin City elections and then also throughout the surrounding areas. You can find that on KXAN.com. We'll be going till about 11 o'clock tonight. So before we get into anything, let's just go to Prop B because that's what most are focused on. And I have Kevin Clark joining me tonight to look into this and see where we're at right now at 10:09 and still votes to be counted.
Well, that's right. We know there's about 78% of votes that have been counted, including some of those on Election Day. I'm not sure if we can pull up those numbers, but we'll see if we can get those up in a second. But we obviously know this has been what many people have gone to the polls for so many people have weighed in on it, from the Texas Governor Greg Abbott to Ben and Jerry's out in Vermont. Everybody seems to be kind of attached to this. But if things go the way they continue to go, Prop B passes, this will reintroduce the public camping ban that council lifted almost 2 years ago. That would have been June of 2019. The previous ban was in effect for 23 years. And what this would do is this would create a criminal penalty for public camping. It would criminalize it by citation. Of course, usually an officer or an enforcement official would give an individual experiencing homelessness a chance to leave before issuing a citation. But at this point, we do know that with early voting results in, and with some of the general election or the day of election day results in, Prop B, yes on Prop B has a substantial lead. I'm not sure we can pull up those numbers, Andrew.
We don't have a fancy graphic at this point, but I do have the up-to-the-minute numbers. Looking at it was at 9:57, so 12 minutes ago.
9:57.
Prop B4 is 59%, 77,000 voted for as of right now, and we have 41% against. 79% of the vote is currently in at this point. So Prop B4 is leading by about 24,000 votes, a little bit under 24,000 votes, with 79% of the vote in.
And the folks on that side of it, the yes on Prop B, have been very confident. They think, even when we spoke with Matt Makoviak, who is the founder of the PAC Save Austin Now, that's been driving this yes on Prop B campaign, he was very confident that they were going to win easily. Governor Greg Abbott has tweeted about this, basically saying it's all but done. We have not called it yet, but certainly for the governor and for Makoviak and some of the individuals and volunteers and those who voted for Prop B, lots of reasons for optimism. I do want to read a statement that we got just in the last few minutes or so. It is from District 4 Council Member Greg Kassar, who is aligned with the anti-camping ban, anti-Prop B. He says, as results roll in, I expect the results for Prop B will get closer. But I do not believe Austin is as divided as this election makes it seem. The overwhelming majority of Austinites share a common goal, no matter how folks voted on Prop B. We all want to get people out of tents and into homes. Our community must come together after this election and house 3,000 more people, because we can only solve homelessness with homes, not handcuffs. Now, no matter what side, and that's kind of what the Austin's mayor wanted to reinforce as well when he spoke with me earlier. He said, no matter what side you're on, everybody has the same goal of getting Austin's unhoused housed. He's talked about the recent homelessness summit and the fact that he wants to use a good portion of federal disaster relief dollars for homelessness to quell this issue in Austin once and for all. It feels like we've been having this debate for 2 years, maybe more than 2 years. Yep. It's as our city is growing and people are starting to see more tents pop up, and they have seen more tents pop up in visible places. Andrew, I don't know if we are able to use some of that
Adler
mayor
sound?
Yeah,
Yep.
We'd love to hear from the mayor. I spoke with him earlier tonight, and he took a very optimistic view of it. He did say that we're still waiting for results to come in, but he did say he was looking more toward the future now. Let's hear what he had to say. How much of this vote do you think was an indictment on the city council vote to get rid of the camping ban a couple of years ago?
I think that it was, I think the whole election and the campaign real clearly point out that this community wants people out of tents. And I think that people on both sides of the yes and no are agreeing on that. I think that this election really manifests the community desire, the joint desire to do that and to get people in safer and better places.
Have you had any conversations with APD or anybody in the city's homeless strategy office about the practical implications of this and how it might be enforced from day one?
I think it's pretty clear that if this passes, it'll get put into effect on the date that it gets certified. And then the manager is going to be his responsibility to implement it. I'm going to be focused is where I think the community needs folks to focus, and that is in making sure that we can get people out of tents.
How much of this vote do you think was an indictment on the city council vote to get rid of the camping ban a couple of years ago?
Well, I think that it was, I think the whole election and the campaign real clearly point out that this community wants people out of tents. And I think that people on both sides of the yes and no are agreeing on that. I think that this election really manifests the community desire, the joint desire to do that and to get people in safer and better places.
Have you had any conversations with APD or anybody in the city's homeless strategy office about the practical implications of this and how it might be enforced from day one?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that if this passes, it'll get put into effect on the date that it gets certified. And then the manager is going to be his responsibility.
And that was Mayor Adler from earlier in the evening. He actually tweeted in the last 10 minutes or so something a little similar about kind of the unified direction of the city and the common interest in getting people out of tents and into housing. He said the Prop B campaign and the vote, on both sides have to be seen as an expression of the political will to end tenting. The election underscores that we need to accelerate and scale a solution to end tenting. Andrew, it's important to understand, too, that Mayor Adler has been personally invested in this campaign. He donated more than $10,000 of his own money to the Homes Not Handcuffs PAC, which is the most organized political effort against Prop B. He and many others who are opponents of the ban have said it does not help individuals experiencing homelessness. In fact, it hurts them by potentially saddling them with fines they can't afford to pay, pushing them further into the woods so that they aren't close to the city where there is more likely to be services and case management as well as housing. We'll also be speaking to Matt Makowiak, who is the co-founder of Save Austin Now. We'll get to that in just a little bit.
Kevin, it's 10/15, May 1st. If these results hold, May 2nd isn't going to be some wave your magic wand and things are different. What happens now if these results stay the same?
Well, you actually heard me ask Mayor Adler about that, and he said it's incumbent on the city manager to implement that. But I asked him if he had any conversations with the Austin Police Department about how enforcement could potentially go. I asked that of the city's homeless strategy office. If they've had conversations about enforcement, what would this look like on day one? And a city spokesperson told us it didn't have any specific information about those discussions, but that city staff would be working on the practical applications of the ban after the election. They have not told me anything other than that. What was also said to me is the date this would actually go into effect is the date these election results are canvassed. That is expected to be 10 days from now, so May 11th.
Kevin, we're waiting on Matt Makowiak to be available to us, and so we will continue that conversation when Matt is available to get the Save Austin Now side of things. I appreciate you sticking around and going for the long haul on this for the next 45 minutes. We're going to continue to dive into this prop, and then also there are 8 different props in the Austin City election. I just want to get to a couple of results from a few of those that have already passed. KXAN has already called. Prop A passed 81% to 19% at this point. That was to amend the city charter to require the option of binding arbitration, labor negotiations between the city and firefighters union, and also Prop D, which would change the date of mayoral elections to presidential election years. That passed 65% to 35% right now. And also, just if you're looking for any race in particular, I want to make sure you guys check out KXAN.com. We've got our live blog that you can see us in Inception here, as we're also live there, or you can look at some of the other results that are coming through throughout the night. We also have a results page here that we will be updating until the races go final all across the board. So we could be here for a little while, but we will make sure that all the numbers are covered before we bounce out the door. John Engel joining me now. Appreciate that. You've been really digging into Prop F, which I don't know if the results that came in surprised you. I'll let you just kind of lead the way on what you thought tonight was going to be like and how different it is now.
Well, Andrew, we put Prop F to bed a lot earlier than I expected. You know, it's interesting because there was sort of equal money raised on both sides, and what really sticks out to me, I mean, this margin, we're talking about almost 100,000 votes, 93,000 votes right now, 93,000 votes. The vote for Proposition F, the strong mayor proposal, which would make the elected mayor the CEO of the city, so to speak, 17,000 votes. It takes 20,000 votes to get a proposition on the ballot. So this is with 76% reporting, and they very well could surpass the 20,000 vote threshold. But I do think it is important to note that they still have not passed that. An incredible margin for the against crowd on Proposition F. And I said this earlier in the evening, that my expectations were that this could be, you know, a sleepy proposition that slips under the radar. Maybe people skip over it. Maybe people don't check the box. You know, maybe it gets bundled into some other propositions and people just don't know what's going on. But I was clearly proven wrong with this vote in that Austin voters know what they're doing, Andrew.
All right, so I don't want to steal your thunder here, but
it's stolen.
It's stolen. Prop B, it has passed. Prop B and Prop C have passed. We're calling it. The totals that we have right now: 59% for Prop B, 41% against. That's with 79% in. So KXAN projection: Austin Prop B passes and Prop C passes 61% to 39% with 77% of the vote.
Andrew, I want to share something with you. So a respected GOP data guy here in Austin, who's used by a lot of campaigns in the political sphere in Texas, Derek Ryan, he tweeted out, based on his data, that on the Austin camping ban proposition, 20% of early voters were Republican primary voters, 55% were Democrat primary voters. This is all public information. The remaining had no primary history, and based on modeling data, 75% of that group skewed Democrat. So the postmortem of the camping ban vote will be very, very interesting to see how people voted and from which groups, because like Matt McCoyak told us earlier in the evening from Save Austin Now, the group that pushed this proposition, this really didn't necessarily come down to the battle lines if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. If you're a Republican, you don't want people camping on the street. If you're a Democrat, you think people should be able to camp anywhere. It didn't come down that way. And I think it's a similar conversation that we had around the 2020 election with the defund the police and whether to support public safety. Defunding the police and that moniker was not successful in suburban communities, even ones that skewed Democrat. So I do think that this issue permeated the partisanship that we see in politics and on everything else. And it's fascinating to see the numbers, and I'll look to Derek Ryan's data as he analyzes it in the weeks to come. But a big takeaway, for at least for me, as we're looking at these results, that KXAN has called Prop B. It's passed.
And we're just going to do this on the fly. Do you want to go to Daryl?
Sure. Yeah. You want to bring in Daryl Slusher? He's a former Austin City Council member. He is with the Austin Independent now, analyzing politics. And let me make sure I've got my earpiece in so that I can actually hear Daryl. Daryl, do we have you?
Let's make sure. I think it's still connecting here.
Okay, and as we wait to get Daryl, I mean, this is a big moment in tonight. I mean, the reason that a lot of people went to the polls was for Prop B. I know that a lot was made about the strong mayor proposition and Prop F and what that would mean for the structure of the city. Look, it was Prop B that got people out to vote on a rainy day, on a typically low turnout city election. This was the issue for the last year that we have been covering at this station every single day for at least a year. It's incredible to see, and this vote margin is stark. I mean, it's It's narrowed since early voting,
Sure.
but it is still large. Do we have Daryl?
Daryl, can you hear us? I don't know. Daryl, you got us?
We'll keep trying to get Daryl, and once he hears us, he can chime in. But Andrew, when we're looking at these numbers, and in the last 20, 30 minutes, you know, the kind of breaking the fourth wall here, we were in the newsroom saying, when are we going to call it? When's the time? Because those early voting, that separation was pretty large. And our executive producer, John Thomas, said it's the anti-Prop B camp has to go 3-1 the rest of the way.
Right.
And that certainly didn't go that way, and we didn't expect it to. But that's the threshold that we hold ourselves here at KXAN to make sure that we get these things right. And to call this before 10:30 at an 18% clip there is something. Daryl, you hear us? There we go. All right, we got Daryl Schlescher. He's a former Austin City Council member. He is with the Austin Independent. He knows Austin City politics up and down. Daryl, we've seen the vote total narrow on Prop B, 59-41, but now we're calling it. Are you surprised it's even that close? And I'm assuming you heard some of the data that I was rattling off, that the partisan lines that we often see for issues in politics didn't seem to be as present on Prop B.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, and I think the council probably ought to think about that those same, if you want to call it a coalition, that might be formed around the cadet class issue, the defund the police issue, because I think it's more of the left wing, pretty far left of the Democratic Party that wants to defund the police. The council went that way in the back in the budget last summer. So I think they might have to rethink this whole thing or look at it from that perspective, because I think a lot of those voters share the same perspective as B and not wanting to defund the police.
Yeah, and I compared it to that with the 2020 election. You feel the same?
Oh, yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think, and you can see too how that supposedly the moderate Joe Biden won. Yet he's taking a really implementing a very progressive agenda, or trying to, anyway. So I think you might get more police reform here. I know I sort of changed the subject. You get more police reform here if you take that kind of more moderate or middle of the road, or at least say we got to have reform, but we still need some cops. I think that's where the majority of Austin people are. Just like didn't want people camping out, but they want to house the homeless, I think.
And you said earlier this evening that you did see the vote on Prop B to be an indictment on the decisions that this council has made. I'm interested to hear, I've asked you a lot of questions about the results and some pointed questions, this or that. Anything surprise you tonight? Did anything stick out to you that caught your eye of, I didn't see that coming?
Not really. I mean, the margin on the strong mayor thing, that's pretty astounding. I mean, it was pretty clear there was a strong organization against it. It did seem like to me the campaign was sort of abandoning the ship late in the campaign, and that's also, they didn't show up for this show either. They declined that, I heard earlier. So I think they realized it was going down, but 83%, that's a lot. Now, one thing that didn't surprise me, and I did manage to look at some of the precinct results, at least from the early vote, and the Prop B was failing in some of the central city, not all of them, but some of it. But then there was wide margins in favor of it, and especially in the Northwest and suburban areas. You're getting like 80, even 90% in some precincts. So I think it just couldn't survive that. And like I was saying earlier, this was just an issue. The mayor declared, said, like you pointed out earlier, said it wasn't working. So it's hard to get the central city excited. One of these where central city is going to go 80% one way, the suburban areas maybe not quite that much, so it would go more in the liberal progressive direction. This was different than that.
Daryl, I'll leave you with this one. Kevin has pointed out a couple of times, and I think it's a fair point to make, that there are a lot of people who look at the vote for Prop B and it passing and sit back in their chair and say, well, it's not going to mean anything because either the Austin Police Department isn't going to enforce it at the direction of, I don't know, the mayor, the city manager, whoever it is, or the district attorney isn't going to prosecute, citations to people for camping. How do you think that the city will take those next steps, given that the voters have sent I would say, a pretty clear message on what they want to see?
It's a very clear message. I think they'll probably move deliberately in doing that, but that they're going to have to. They can't just refuse to implement the clear will of the voters. So I noticed that the mayor, who didn't give a real clear answer, but he said it's up to the city manager to do that. So I think they're probably going to look at it like that and then try to work harder on finding housing. But I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I've been wondering that myself, and it's it's a real human tragedy and not a very pretty thing, but I think they are going to have to move them out of those camps, make people move out of those camps, probably starting with the first 4 that Councilmember Kitchen had in her HEAL initiative, Ben White 183, and the 2 parts of Cesar Chavez.
Daryl Slusher, thanks so much for joining us and providing your insight for us throughout the evening as we try to make sense of these election results. Daryl was touching on Proposition F, Andrew, as one of those big surprises. 86% to 13%. This was not I'm skipping over it because I don't understand a proposition for Austin voters. They went in with a clear mindset that this was not going to happen. And the proposition was essentially to make an elected person the most powerful person in the city. Replace the city manager with an elected mayor, like 6 of the largest cities in the U.S. have done. I believe it's 12 of the top 20. Houston is a strong mayor format. The group against that proposition, Austin for All People, they formed a pretty broad coalition, business leaders and folks on both sides of the political spectrum against this. And even Governor Greg Abbott tweeted out that the strong mayor proposal failed, as if that was his position. I hadn't seen him take a position on the strong mayor proposal until the vote was called by KXAN. Nico Ramsey is with Austin for All People. He joined us at 7 o'clock, so 3.5 hours ago, and I said, Nico, you're up about 70%, and you said, pump your brakes, it's still very early. Nico, you're up 74%. How's it feel?
Obviously we're ecstatic over here at Austin for All People. And tonight was a clear rebuke of Austin for Progressive Reform's Proposition F. What we've learned tonight is that we're not Chicago, we're not Seattle, we're not Houston, we're Austin, Texas. And here we believe that equitable and equal distribution of power in all parts of Austin is what makes us great. And we believe that the hands of our executive branch belong in somebody who we know can run a city. And if deemed that person is not doing their job, they're here today and gone tomorrow, and we don't run the risk of losing so much of what we already gained with a strong mayor.
So Nico, my next question, your group raised about $100,000, a little bit over from 5 donors. You're not a PAC, and you've been very clear about that. Austinites for Progressive Reform is a PAC, and they took in quite a bit of money themselves. I saw some signs around town, no to the strong mayor. I saw some of your signs. But how did you do it? This margin is pretty incredible. We know the Austin electorate is engaged. It's a great thing for us in the news business and those who cover politics, because Austin voters know what they're voting on and they know what they're talking about. But how'd you get this margin? I mean, we're talking about almost 100,000 votes in a city election. It's incredible.
Well, thank you. Well, to be very clear, just like you mentioned, we're not a PAC. And actually, Austinites for Equity and Austinites, it's like Austin Leadership ATX. Those were the 2 PACs, and we're strictly the educational group. Gotcha. And though we worked in cooperation, our efforts were making sure that we're reaching the people we need to. Austin for All People focused on going out and educating. So we went to all groups, doesn't matter what party, doesn't matter where you landed, we were talking to you because we felt that is what was missing during this whole process. The Austin voter was not informed that their government was this close to being overhauled during, granted, we had high turnout in this election, but May is historically a low voter turnout election. And, you can say for what other propositions might have been on the ballot drove that turnout, but we ran the risk of having our entire government overhauled with little input. And I think it's also very fitting to note that we all know it takes 24,000 signatures to get something on the ballot. As it stands right now, that threshold for Proposition F didn't even get close. So
yeah, I made that point a few minutes ago. Were you watching the stream, or are we like minds? I don't know which one it was, but
oh well, I was waiting, but I didn't see it. But great minds think alike.
That's right. So lastly, I'll leave you here, Nico. It's interesting. We've heard a number of voices today say that the vote on Prop B was an indictment of the City Council, and that it was a clear message to the City Council that how it's approaching homelessness has not worked and is not working. It's interesting also that the anti-strong mayor camp was, we need to preserve our representation and, in a sense, protect the sanctity of the council. I mean, there's kind of a paradox there. I'm interested to hear what your response to that is, because on one hand we're saying council isn't doing its job the right way, and on the other hand we're saying make sure that they can still have the same amount of power.
It's a very good point, and thank you for the question. Look, homelessness is one of many issues that we have in our city. And the thing about Austin and what Austinites voted for was not hoping that one person can solve that problem. What Proposition F would have done would have given a consolidation of power to one individual. Now, to those watching at home, ask yourself, what if homelessness was not the mayor's main priority underneath a strong mayor? We would see that, things still would not be getting done, in addition to the slate of other issues in our city. So while homelessness is an issue that we have to face as a community, it is not one that we can solely put into the hands of one elected individual. And so, voters know that underneath our current form of government, 10 voices on the table is a lot better than one, because at least we can move forward with compromise, and we know that voices in our neighborhoods are being heard.
Nico Ramsey with Austin for All People, thanks so much for staying up with us and doing a couple of hits with us on these live streams. Congratulations in your effort. Proposition F fails, Andrew, and we look ahead. There are a lot of questions about Prop B and what comes next in terms of enforcement when it kicks in, and Kevin will have more for you on that. But Prop F, it's pretty simple. Nothing changes. Yeah,
I was just curious to see if any numbers would change with it. We're obviously still counting the votes. Prop F, 110,000 voted against, 17,000 for.
Yeah.
It's pretty staggering.
That was our first vote that we called.
Yeah.
Our first proposition to call tonight, and it was pretty early. I think it was 7:30, maybe a little earlier.
Yes. It was on this stream, our first stream we did. Oh, we also have updated numbers on Prop B. KXAN has called Prop B, and I will break down what those numbers show, and also just an overall general look at where we are with the Austin City elections. 4 out of the 8 props have been decided. Prop A passes, Prop B passes, Prop D passes, Prop F, which we've discussed, failed. We're going to continue with Prop B because that is the main focus. That is what we are, what we've been about, what Kevin and I have been talking about for tonight, and then what the discussion has been for years.
2 years.
2
2
years.
years at least. Far more than tonight.
Yes, we've discussed it a lot tonight, but we're not even 1/10,000th of what the discussion has been. So let's just look at this number. What are we at? 59%. 41% against. That's what we've called there.
So this was 78% a while ago, and we hadn't called it yet. But we went back and did some math, and it just seems very, very unlikely at this point that that Prop B is not going to pass.
Okay, so that's where we're at right now. It's 10:38. We're expecting to hear from Matt Makoviak from Save Austin now in just a couple minutes, who his group has really spearheaded this. That's fair to say, correct?
I'm waiting on his text right now. He should join us in just a couple minutes or so. He joined us in the 7 o'clock hour. He was extremely confident then, and that was well before we called this, but certainly it was an early voting period dominated by yes on Prop B. And because we did talk about the anti-Prop B and homes not handcuffs in that group, I do want to talk about just some of my experiences going out with I mean, I've been out with both sides canvassing through this race in the last few weeks or so, but for the pro Prop B side, I mean, this was really driven predominantly by a large grassroots effort. Yes, $1.3 million was spent. I'm sorry, $1.25 million as of the filings from April 21st. But it wasn't just big donors. Matt Makowiak has told me 2,700 total donors. And John touched on it just a little bit earlier. This wasn't really a red versus blue split. You met a lot of people out on the trail that were volunteering or just that would speak to you when you were out in the field, and they said that I'm not political. I normally don't get involved in campaigns. I don't normally donate, but I have watched what has happened to this city in terms of the tent cities that are popping up, and I felt the need to get involved. Some of them may have been Democrats, in fact. I see Matt Makowiak. He is here. He is the co-founder of Save Austin Now. And Matt, do you hear me?
Let's make sure.
Let's make sure he's unmuted.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
Make sure he gets his headphones in.
We'll give you just a second. He's been bouncing from one interview to another, I imagine. Matt. That's okay, Matt. We called this race a little while ago. You were very confident, even in the 7 o'clock hour. Just tell me what you're feeling right now, and this is definitely the culmination of a lot of hard work on the campaign.
Yeah, we've worked for 23 months on this, right? More than almost 2 years. I mean, it's an incredible amount of time. We've had thousands and thousands of people work on this with us, whether it's collecting petitions, whether it's contributing, whether it's volunteering. We have an army now that's part of this Austin Now movement, and this is not about party. This is one of the things Steve Adler and Greg Casar never understood. There is no Republican or Democratic view to whether you want to live in a safe city or not. There is no Republican or Democratic view to whether you want to live in a clean city or not. What there is a view of now that we know is 63% of the people in this city don't believe the camping ordinance is good for the city. It was good for standard of living, it was good for the homeless, was good for the residents, was good for anyone. And it's unfortunate because Steve Adler and Greg Casar doubled down every single time, pretending this policy was working, pretending it was good for the city when it wasn't, when all visual and visible evidence was to the contrary. So tonight, this is a resounding victory for everyone whose neighborhood's been affected, everyone who cares about a city park that's been affected, everyone that's driven by a major intersection and has had their life affected by that, everyone that owns a restaurant or owns a hotel or works at a hotel or lives in an apartment building or condo building, everyone who wants to enjoy Town Lake, people that want to go out downtown. I mean, you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of Austinites that have been negatively affected by this disastrous policy that's never succeeded in any city in America where it's ever been tried. And so tonight, Austin stepped back from the abyss. Our citizens rose up and said, no, we're going to fix this mess made by Steve Adler and Greg Casar, and we are going to take the city back. And it's a wonderful thing. I'm very encouraged. I'm grateful to everyone that voted. I'm grateful to everyone that signed the petition. I'm grateful to everyone that contributed. I'm grateful to everyone that volunteered. This is a great win for Austin. This gives a lot of people hope about the future of our city. Our city is a great place. It's been made worse over the last 2 years. We can turn that around, and tonight was the first step in doing that.
Matt, this vote certainly represents a backlash to the city's policies on homelessness, but how do you know that you have a growing army, a growing coalition, a movement, and what comes next?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we have it because I look at the numbers, right? We had 40,000 email addresses. We had 1,000 volunteers, right? We collected 25,000 petitions the first time, 30,000 petitions the second time, and 1/3 the time. We've raised $1.75 million in 9 weeks for this PAC. It's never been done before, ever in the history of our city, anything like this. And so, I'm excited about what that means. I think there's a strong majority of our city that just wants to live in a safe and clean place, a place that protects standard of living, a place that's a great city to live, work, and raise a family in. And so I'm not going to get ahead of where we are. Tonight is about this victory, about the message it sends to Steve Adler and Greg Casar, who need to finally admit their 2-year social experiment was a dreadful failure and need to now rededicate themselves to truly building a consensus, to finally listening for once, and to stopping this double down on failed strategies. Hotels and motels are not the answer. The answer is a regulated central campground like Haven for Hope in San Antonio, combined with a camping ban combined with support for tiny homes and micro home communities like we see at Community First Village and Camp Esperanza. That is the answer. And so if they're going to be open to that kind of approach, they will find no stronger and more committed partner than myself and Save Austin Now. If they want to triple down on wasting money, not being held accountable, no transparency, buying hotels and motels for twice market rate, we're not going to be part of that. We're going to fight that. And so we do have an army behind us now. We're going to keep going. We're going to fight every single day to educate citizens on standard of living issues and to keep pushing to make Austin a better place for families and for people to work.
Matt, I was speaking with the mayor earlier this evening. He is looking ahead at the homelessness, or looking back at the homelessness summit, but wants to use a lot of that federal disaster relief money, to house people here in Austin. What do you think of that and why?
Yeah, so look, we support safe and sheltered environments for our homeless. We don't believe they should be living under the 7th Street Bridge or on the median on Riverside Drive. Steve Adler apparently doesn't mind if that happens. He's done absolutely nothing of consequence for 2 years, despite spending $161 million over the last 3 fiscal years to meaningfully improve the amount of housing that's available to our homeless. So before we spend $225 million at the federal level and $73 million this year among the taxpayer dollars, we ought to first completely, independently, and thoroughly audit the last 3 fiscal years. Where'd the money go? Where'd the money go? It's not a hard question. It shouldn't take that much time. So far, the city and city leadership have been totally unwilling to consider an audit of those funds. So before we take twice as much money and spend it in 1 year than we did in 3 years, we ought to find out why the last 3 years haven't worked. And so look, we don't oppose spending money on the homeless. These are the least among us. They have significant problems, drug and alcohol addiction problems, mental health problems. They need job training. They need to be safe. They're not safe right now. They're worse off today than they were 2 years ago. And now there are 2 times as many of them here as there were 2 years ago. So this intractable, expensive, difficult, complex, complicated problem has become worse because of what Steve Adler and Greg Casar have done. And that is absolutely unconscionable. And every single Austinite ought to be angry about it.
What is the, because I know you touched on it earlier, this is not a red versus blue kind of thing. What is the profile of a Prop B voter? I mean, arguably you've talked with more of them than anybody. Kind of talk about what really, why this really strikes a chord with people internally.
Yeah, look, based on the data that we have, both from the early voting data and also a survey that we conducted on Wednesday of every single voter who voted early, we believe we won 40% of the Democratic vote tonight. We believe we won 88% of the independent vote tonight. And we believe we won 93% of the Republican vote tonight. And you know what? That's a winning coalition in our city. And so this is a massive wake-up call for Steve Adler and Greg Casar and left-wing groups like Homes Not Handcuffs and Democratic Socialists of Austin. Your time is up. You do not represent a majority of this city, and we are going to continue to represent a majority of this city. We're going to raise issues and put issues on the ballot that give Austinites a chance to change direction if they strongly disagree with the things that City Hall is doing. Look, this happened for one reason. City Hall didn't listen. They didn't listen from the very beginning, when the Austin Chamber of Commerce, when the Downtown Austin Alliance, when the Greater Austin Crime Commission, when the UT Police Chief and the Austin Police Chief begged them not to pass the camping ordinance. Slow down. Think about the unintended consequences. Consider this. They blew right through that. They passed it in June. It took effect July 1st, 2019. They went on a 1-month vacation. They came back to an absolute disaster zone. It's been getting worse visibly and meaningfully and measurably worse every single day since. And so again, Austin voters looked at the abyss. They were on the edge of the abyss tonight. They looked down and they said, we're taking a step back. And we believe they're going to keep taking steps with us in the future, whether it be issues related to public safety, issues related to affordability, transportation, et cetera. These are not partisan issues. All I want, and all my Democratic co-founder Cleo Patricic wants, is for Austin to be safe, for people to live, work, and raise a family here, and for it to be a place they can afford, a great place to live. We believe in Austin. I'm not sure Steve Adler and Greg Casar believe in Austin because they've been making Austin worse for 2 years. It's absolutely outrageous. And tonight, they're going to receive this message loud and clear, whether they want to or not.
Matt, who was your first call when you found out or felt strongly that this was in the bag?
Well, we had our team here tonight, everyone that worked so hard for really 9 weeks now since we got on the ballot. So our team just enjoyed it. You know, we celebrated, we hugged, we cried a little bit. I mean, I've had my phone ring quite a bit, as you might imagine. But look, it's not about the calls. It's about the thousands and thousands of people. We have something like 75,000 votes tonight. I thought we needed 50,000 votes to win. We got 75,000 plus votes. It's an extraordinary level of support. And it happened because we worked really hard. We had a lot of people work really hard. We raised a lot of money. We earned a lot of support from out there. And we did it across party lines. This is not about party. They tried to pretend this was Republican versus Democrat. That message failed. They tried to lie about us and say that we want to throw homeless people in jail. We don't. We want homeless people to be in sheltered and safe environments. And no one has failed at that more than the city leadership over the last 2 years. And it's unconscionable what they've done, the money they've wasted. And they want to blame us and pretend we want to throw people in jail. That's not what we want. We want them to spend the money efficiently, effectively, transparently, and immediately, but do it in a way that we know works, not in a way that we know won't work.
Matt, the Governor Greg Abbott tweeted out just a little while ago claiming victory for Prop B, among other things. Have you spoken with the governor, or do you plan to?
I certainly plan to. I've not talked to him tonight. He's been an incredible supporter of public safety in Austin, whether it be issues related to defunding the police, whether it be bail reform, whether it be this issue on the homeless camping ordinance. His leadership has been front and center from the very beginning. In fact, the council reluctantly agreed to ban camping on sidewalks within the 10 feet of the entrance to a home or business and in flood and fire mitigation zones in September of 2019, only after the governor threatened them. I mean, literally, you would still have camping on sidewalks and within the entrance to a home or business today were it not for his leadership. So we appreciate the governor's leadership. We've been in touch with his team from the very beginning. His campaign did a great job turning out voters and helping us. Look, all he wants, as someone who lives in Austin, is to live in a safe city. And he believes it's important that the capital city be a safe place for tourists, be a safe place for state employees, be a safe place for residents, and yes, be a safe place for the homeless. So he's been an incredible partner in this. We had a lot of partners. The Austin Police Association, Safe Horns, the Austin Chamber of Commerce supported us, the Real Estate Council of Austin. We had homeowner associations, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, 1,000 plus volunteers, 40,000 email addresses, enormous fundraising, 3,000 donors that gave over the last 9 weeks, right? 73% under $200, 60 or 62 zip codes represented from all of our donors. Extraordinary, broad, and deep support from around this city. We don't believe it's too much to ask that we live in a safe and clean city. Steve Adler and Greg Casar may think that's too much to ask, but tonight they learned it's not too much to ask. In fact, we're not asking, we're demanding.
Matt, I appreciate your time. Thanks for speaking with us throughout this campaign, and thanks for speaking with us throughout the night. And best of luck moving forward, and we'll look forward to speaking with you very soon.
Thanks, Kevin. Take care. Have a great night.
You too. And that is Matt Mackowiak. He is the co-founder of Save Austin Now, which has worked really since last year when they did not get enough signatures certified as valid by the city clerk to get this exact issue on the ballot. They did so this year. They got more than 20,000 signatures, and it resulted in Prop B passing tonight.
Go
ahead, Andrew.
We've got Travis County's now reporting 100% of their votes, so Prop B will stay with that. 58% for, with about 90,000 people, a little bit over 90,000 people voting for, and then 66,000, 40% voting against.
And again, this is 100%?
This is 100% for Travis County.
Okay,
Travis is at 100% reporting. Yep.
58% for Prop B, 42%.
42%. And I know that you had an interview with Mayor Adler earlier today, and then also he put out a statement just a couple minutes ago. I guess take us through that side of things and what he said in the last couple hours.
Well, the mayor was against Prop B. He's against bringing back the camping ban. He's been affiliated with the Homes Not Handcuffed side, and that's where he was tonight at their watch event. That's where I caught up with him earlier. He's been very personally invested in this. I think I said earlier he donated $10,000 of his own money to the Homes Not Handcuffs PAC. Like many others on that side, very concerned that this, when it does go into effect, it won't actually help the individuals on the street. It will just drive them deeper and deeper into the woods where they may not be able to get help. I don't know if we can have that sound from the mayor earlier, but he is looking ahead, as I discussed a little bit with Matt Mackowiak earlier. The mayor is looking ahead and looking toward housing people, and says that really we have more in common than we think. How much of this vote do you think was an indictment on the city council vote to get rid of the camping ban a couple of years ago?
I think that it was, I think the whole election and the campaign real clearly point out that this community wants people out of tents. And I think that people on both sides of the yes and no are agreeing on that. I think that this election really manifests the community desire, the joint desire to do that and to get people in safer and better places.
Have you had any conversations with APD or anybody in the city's homeless strategy office about the practical implications of this and how it might be enforced from day one?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that if this passes, it'll get put into effect on the date that it gets certified, and then the manager is going to be his responsibility to implement it. I'm going to be focused is where I think the community needs folks to focus, and that is in making sure that we can get people out of tents.
How much?
And that was Mayor Adler speaking with our Kevin Clark about Proposition B. That was before KXAN decided to call the race as Proposition B passing. That number, Travis County is reporting 100% of their votes, and it was 58 to 42% voted to adopt an ordinance to create a criminal offense for public camping, create a criminal offense for solicitation, ban camping in a public area. We're getting most of the results in for the Austin city elections. We also have the propositions from Georgetown, Jarrell, Liberty Hill, and Hayes County as well. And I kind of just want to go through a few of those from what we've seen. The Austin city elections, KXAN feels comfortable calling all 8 of those propositions. I will run through them very quickly here. Who needs to go quickly? We're fine. Well, I'll take my time breaking these down. Also, just as a reminder, you can go to our KXAN.com, our homepage, and find the election results for all of the different propositions throughout Central Texas tonight. So 8 different props. Proposition A in Austin, that passes 81% to 19%. That was to allow labor negotiations between the city and the firefighters union. We've touched on Proposition B quite a bit as if you've been watching this for any minute of time, you're aware, and that has passed for 59% to 41%. Proposition C, that has also passed. That was to allow the oversight of the Office of Police Oversight from the city manager to the city council. That passes 63 to 37%. And then Prop D, that also passes. You're going to be changing the date, the mayoral election to presidential election years for a little bit of consistency. 2022 mayoral election will go forward. The winner would serve a 2-year term before facing re-election in 2024, and that passes. Also, Prop E passes 58% to 42%. Then we've got Prop F, Prop G, and Prop H. Those all failed. Prop F by a very, very convincing majority. Strong mayor form of government, we've discussed that throughout these live streams. Prop G was to add an 11th city council district. That failed. And then democracy dollars, the democracy dollar idea, which was to allow voters in Austin to donate to a candidate. That proposition also failed. And again, KXAN.com, we're keeping our numbers up to date as often as possible. But Austin's not the only place that has had numbers and results come through. I'm doing this on the fly, so give me a second. Let me make sure we can pop all these up. Hayes County had 6 propositions on the docket today and in early voting, and KXAN is comfortable calling all of those propositions. So let's go through those. I have graphics for those. Let me pull those up. We'll start with Proposition A. So Proposition A, that is school district growth. It was basically around a $148 million bond paying for a new elementary school, improvements at middle schools, science lab renovations. That proposition passes 60% to 40%. Proposition B, let me make sure if I can just scroll right through that. Nope, that's not what I want. There we go. 58%. Proposition B passes. That would be a lot of renovation, rehabilitation to district assets, calls for $41 million in bonds. That passed. Proposition C does not pass. 56% voted against Proposition C. That was a little bit under $13 million in bonds to increase stadium capacity for Lehman High School's football stadium, I believe, and Johnson's football stadium. That proposition has failed. 100% of the vote is in. Proposition D also failed. Those were more stadium improvements, pay for parking improvements at Hayes High School's football stadium, as well as improvements to the Lehman High School baseball and softball complex. Proposition E also fails. $29 million to build a new central administration building and renovate the existing central office building. That failed 53% to 47%. Very, very close vote there. And then to Proposition F for technology improvements, that one passes 63% to 37%. All right, so that is Hayes County. Did you get all that? Hopefully I didn't go through it too fast. We've also have Georgetown and Jarrell and Liberty Hill. So we will start with Jarrell. Proposition A in Jarrell passes 75% to 25%. 79% of the vote is in, but we're comfortable calling that one for school building bonds. $111.6 million in bonds to build a new elementary school. That proposition passes. Proposition B. See if we can get to that one. Proposition B for stadium improvements. That one also passes, 66% to 34%. That one would be $1.7 million to expand seating and make other improvements to the district's stadiums. So busy night around Central Texas to look for all these different propositions. Austin has been our main focus. If we're just circling back again, Proposition B has passed. That would be to adopt an ordinance to basically make it a criminal offense for public camping, to ban camping in any public area. That has passed, and KXAN has called that race. We've also called the race for Prop F. That proposition failed, which was a strong mayor type, would make the city a strong mayor form of government. That proposition fails, so we will stay in the current version of the government. It is 11:01. We're going to stay with you for the rest of the night until we get these numbers in throughout the rest of Central Texas. But for now, I'm going to let you guys go. Appreciate you staying with us for the long haul and supporting the local governments in whichever way that you wanted to support the local government. I'm Andrew Snicker, and it's been a great election night. You guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday night and your weekend. Take care.